Student, welcome to another video. Today's topic is past simple. This is a grammar class, of course, and we'll be talking about this specific verb tense, which is a verb tense that probably you already know, right? Because we learned it in basic courses. We learned that we've got regular verbs, irregular verbs. The regular ones finish in ed, the irregular ones we've got to memorize. They're kind of a very huge list of verbs. So you really need to start putting effort into it. You really need to start memorizing those verbs. And the idea of today's lesson is to practice some of them with you, along with reminding you all about the structures and the correct usage of it. So let's get started by setting the usage. When do we use past simple? And this answer must be very clear in your head, dear student. Past simple is a verb tense down to finished actions. Finished actions in the past. That means that whenever or whatever situation you're describing with it, this situation is over. The situation has no direct contact with the present. It's finished. It's in the past. And that's why you can say when it happened, because it is finished, it is over. So if I am to draw a timeline over here and try to explain to you in terms of position in time. So here we are in the present, of course, and here's the past, here's the future. Something happened here, but it happened, but it started happening, it happened, and it finished happening, and it's completely over. And this is not affecting my present in any specific way or any specific fashion. My present is not being affected by this past action. So that's the perfect scenario for a past simple sentence. And then you know that you have to choose a subject if you want to create a sentence with this intention, plus a verb. You know that this verb is in the second form also called past simple. I think I'm the only one who calls it second form. It's because the verbs follow a list that brings you with 3 columns. So let's think, for example, about verb go. We've got the first one that we use in the present. We've got went, which is the past form, and then we've got gone. So this is the third form, right? So why not call this the second form? So the second form is the form that we use for the past. Plus a complement, because depending on the verb you choose, you have to complement it with some ideas. Basically, that is the equation for past simple, if we can call it this way. So let's call this guy John, and let's say that John stayed home last night. Okay, that's a typical sentence in the past simple. John is my subject. This verb is in the second form. We know that this verb is regular. Yes? John stayed home last night. It's a quite simple sentence. What calls my attention when it comes to regular verbs is that most students have they struggle a lot with trying to pronounce this correctly. Observe, we do not say stayed. That's not the pronunciation. The pronunciation here is stayed. Stayed. So repeat after me. John stayed home last night. One more time. John stayed home last night. Very well. You see that this has a pronunciation of D, but let's say that last week John worked late every day last week. So John worked late every day last week. Again, another phrase, another sentence in the affirmative fashion. In this affirmative fashion, again with a regular verb. But look at the pronunciation. This is somehow different because in here I was saying stayed. But now I'm saying worked. Worked. And that is the correct pronunciation of it. You're not going to say worked. the three possible pronunciations you can get for ed, referring to this suffix that we add at the end of the verbs to form the past. The pronunciations could be about t, d, or ed. These are the three alternatives you've got. So if the verb finishes in something that has got a vowel or that you use your vocal cords to say, like stay, if you put your hands on your throat, you see that you feel it vibrating. So your throat is vibrating because you're making use of your vocal cords, and because of that, you need to use the voice sound, D, whenever you're using the ED particle. So the pronunciation is stayed. But right over here, before the ED particle, we've got a K, and this K indicates this sound. And if you yourself put your hands on your throat, you will perceive that there's no vibration being made because your vocal cords are not being used. So this is a voiceless sound. So we jumped straightforwardly into the T, which is the correct sound in this case, because it's voiceless as well. So you can see that we've got two possible pronunciations, one in D, one in T, right? With voiced and voiceless sounds. And we could also say that some verbs by themselves, they already finish in the sound of T or D. For example, when we think of John needed a ride home. John needed a ride home. Observe that need, again, it's a regular verb, it's an affirmative sentence, and this ed over here, it's not pronounced ad, it's pronounced ed, like needed. Needed. We've got two syllables happening here. Needed. John needed a ride home. In all the previous examples, if your verbs do not finish exactly at T or D, whenever you're adding this ed particle, you're not creating a new syllable. But in this particular case, you are. So a verb that was just need, only one syllable, now has two syllables, needed. Okay? So that's the past simple with regular verbs. And what about irregular verbs, teacher? Okay, irregular verbs are the ones you will have to memorize. For example, the verb bite, morder, whose past is bit. Or the verb wake, whose past is woke. So these are verbs that you really have to memorize, and we will work on the list later on. But what I want to call your attention to is how this really works, because until now we were talking about affirmative sentences, right? So in affirmative sentences, we've got to change the verb. You may well take this note, or you may well want to take this note, which says that in the affirmative, write that down please. For past simple, the verbs only change in the affirmative. And that's true. For past simple, the verbs change in affirmative sentences. Okay? The same doesn't happen in negative sentences, of course you know. Why? Because it didn't. You remember that English is a language that we change the verbs by the negative particle. This is so fun about it. We say that in this case, John stayed home last night. We had a subject and we had a verb. This verb was in the past. But what if here in the middle, right before the verb, we use the correct auxiliary that shows us that this is past? And that's what Americans, Brits, and everybody who speaks English does. We show you before using the verb what verb tense the verb is. This is fantastic about English. So you could say that in the negative form, we'll have something as subject plus didn't. And didn't is the form of oral approach. It's the oral approach of English. Because if you want, when you're writing, you could say did not. Okay, the same form that in the present tense, you could say do not. Plus a verb, and this verb is in the base form now. Why, teacher? Because you have just showed that you were using past by its auxiliary. The auxiliary here is showing that this is past simple. So the verb doesn't need, and in fact it can't be in the past. Okay? Plus the complement. The complement must exist. So if we are to transform these sentences that are over here into negative sentences, we could say John didn't or did not stay. The verb must return to the original sentence. John did not stay home last night. Did not stay. Again, the verb needs to go back to the base form because of didn't. Okay? And in this case, I just wrote did not, but it can be didn't, as I said. This is more common when we are speaking. This is more common when we are writing. The next one, John worked late. Okay, so John didn't work, verb in the base form, late. I'm using John here, but I could be using whatever person of the discourse I would like to. Because in the past, the verbs do not change, like in the present. Remember that for he, she, it, in the present, you need to make those changes to the verb. For example, in the affirmative, you need to add s to it. For questions, you need to use does, not do. But in the past, we don't have such a thing. We only have did, and we are going to use did for everyone, for every person of the discourse. And the verbs only change once by going to the past. So we do not have another change to the verb when it comes to he, she, or it. It's quite simple, quite plain. So John didn't work late. Didn't work. Didn't here. We drop this ed particle. The same will happen with needed. John needed. John didn't need. The verb goes back to its original form. Didn't need. All right. Very well. So now we've covered the affirmative and we've covered the negative with regular verbs which just demand us to add ed or drop ed whenever possible or when we are using it. But let's rephrase this. I don't want to use regular verbs anymore. Let's use John. I'm gonna need to change the whole thing, so why not start all over with it. Let's say that John drank coffee in the morning. Look, the verb drink. Drink is an irregular verb. It goes to the past and it becomes drink. It becomes drink. Don't confuse with the third form, okay? We're talking about the second. This is drain. It's like an aim over here, okay? Not is drunk, the third form. So John drank coffee in the morning. Okay, drank. It's an irregular form. How do I know? How do I memorize all these verbs, teacher? By that very old method of sitting down, copying vocabulary, repeating time after time, okay? Searching for words in the dictionary. That old method has proven to be very effective. You should try. Let's say John and Mary. I'm changing the subject here so you can see that the verb doesn't change. John and Mary had fun at the party. John and Mary had fun at the party. John and Mary, my subject, had. You see, it doesn't matter if it's singular or plural in the past. The verb is always in the second form and the second form doesn't change. Another one, let's say John broke up with Mary. Guys, if the verb that you are using is a compound verb or a phrasal verb, a verb that is made up with other parts like prepositions or adverbs, the verb goes to the past and the preposition follows. This preposition follows it along. It tags along. It doesn't change. Many students forget about preposition when they are transforming the verbs into the past. Broke up with Mary. for Mary. So 3 sentences in the affirmative using irregular forms. Now, can I put them in the negative? Yes, I can. How? Remembering that if I use didn't is already showing me that this is in the past. So we cannot use another thing in the past over here. It would be totally redundant. So John did not or didn't. In this case, we said that John drank. The negative of this would be John didn't drink. It is back in the original form, coughing this morning. John and Mary had fun. So if it's in the negative, they didn't have fun. The verb returned to the original form. John broke up with Mary. The negative, John didn't break up with Mary. So the verb gets follows along with its particle. So if in the present I've got up with, in the past I will have up with. It doesn't change. Okay? So that's all we can say about the negative and the affirmative. But we haven't talked about the interrogative yet. Why not, Ichi? You've forgotten. No, I've just left it purposely to the end of this video. Because in the question format you can have some questions that are yes, no questions, and you already know what yes, no questions are. But let me remind you again that questions that start with the auxiliary itself, like did you enjoy your lunch? Did you enjoy your lunch? Okay, this is starting with the auxiliary, and this is because the answer for it is yes, I did, or no, I didn't. So if you start a question with an auxiliary verb like this, your answer will be consequently a yes or no. And when you're answering it, you may well want to repeat the auxiliary instead of repeating the whole sentence. You just stop here and you will sound very smart. Did you enjoy your lunch? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. But we can as well make questions that will demand some more precise pieces of information. For example, where did you go yesterday? Where did you go yesterday? Oh, in this case it's not possible to say yes I did or no I didn't, because I need to give some specific information over here. And then you could say I went. See that now you are using the affirmative, so you need to change the verb. Here the verb is not changed because you've got did, but now it's affirmative. I went to the beach. I went to the beach, for instance. Okay? And it really doesn't matter what auxiliary WH may use. It will depend on what kind of information you want, right? So here we've got information of place, and the best guy to ask questions about place is where. But if we wanted to have information about time, for example, we would use when. When did you arrive? When did you arrive? When did you arrive? And then you could say, I arrived yesterday. So when asks questions about time. Very, very simple, very, very plain. Okay? Let's do some activities, please. At this moment, I really want you to stop or pause the video, go over Unit 5 on Intermediate Grammar News, try to do the exercises there, and then you come back here and continue watching, because I'm just going to correct the video, the activities with you, the exercises. Okay? Now, let's see what we've got. Oh, before doing the exercises, I want to read the instructions with you because of vocabulary, pronunciation, things like that. So all the explanation is here on the board. I hope you have taken notes. But I really want to follow along with what the book brings to you, because it's also a source of vocabulary. Okay? So let me just change this. Okay, now you can see it better, can't you? And I'm just here. I need to focus because sometimes I keep walking and you can't see me anymore. But I'm going to follow along with the reading. Okay, past simple. Study this example. Mozart was an Austrian musician and composer. He lived from 1756 to 1791. He started composing at the age of 5 and wrote more than 600 pieces of music. He was only 35 years old when he died. So you see the verbs was, lived, started, wrote, was, and died. These verbs are in the past. Wrote is an irregular verb, as you may see. Started, lived, and died, they are regular ones because of the ed particle at the end. And it's a very short story about Mozart. But look, what called my attention over here is this 600 pieces of music. Maybe it's something that I can teach you today, just briefly, that use pieces of. Oh, here I am. For example, when you want to say, eu ganhei ou eu recebi 2 conselhos. So you could say, I was given 2 advices. So your first thought may jump to this conclusion, but this is wrong because advice is uncountable, so it cannot be in the plural. So if it cannot be in the plural, this is just wrong. So how can we change this? By using pieces of. So 2 pieces of advice. And this may help you out in many situations. For example, with the words equipment, that in Portuguese we count, and it's quite weird for us not to count equipment, right? Because in Portuguese we do count it, but in English we just don't. Furniture. You know, when you want to specifically talk about your sofa, what is your sofa? Your sofa is not the furniture, because furniture involves all the pieces of furniture you've got. So we could say that your sofa is a piece of furniture, okay? Or information. All these words, they are uncountable, so we frequently come across problems with it because we are really tempted to use them in the plural, for instance, and we just can't. So to solve this, we use piece. And music, of course, is uncountable. Don't confuse music, which is uncountable, with song. Song is countable, okay? Because it is about that specific piece of music that has beginning and end, has lyrics, that's a song, okay? Music is just the sound flowing, vibrating through your ears and making you feel the pleasure of music. I love music. I really, really, really love it. But okay, I was reading the text. I wanted you to follow along with me. Letter B says, very often the past simple ends in ed. Of course, these are called regular verbs. Repeat these sentences after me, dear student. I work in a travel agency now. Before that, I worked in a department store. Look the way I pronounced. I said worked. Oh, maybe you need me to change it back the way it was. Yeah. You see the way I read this? I said worked. I didn't say worked. I said worked. And that's the correct pronunciation of it. Next one. We invited them to our party, but they decided not to come. Can you repeat that? Invited, decided. Okay. Next one. The police stopped me on my way home last night. The police stopped me. Look, the pronunciation is please. Many students say police, and this is wrong. We say police. Okay. And stop. Remember, stop is a voiceless sound, so the past tense sounds like a T. Stopped. Next one. Laura passed her exam because she studied very hard. So she passed her exam. Passed. Like past simple. That's exactly the same pronunciation. Passed. Because she studied. Studied. Not studied. Studied. Okay? But many verbs are irregular. Look at the case of write, that becomes wrote. See, that becomes saw. Go, that becomes went. Shut, that doesn't just change. It continues being shut. Let's read the examples. Mozart wrote more than 600 pieces of music. We saw Tanya in town a few days ago. I went to the cinema 3 times last week. It was cold, so I shut the window. Shut, close, exactly the same. Now, some questions. We already studied how to transform sentences that are in the past into questions. But look at here. Did you go out last night? Oh, I may have forgotten to inform you guys that when you have these yes-no questions, questions whose answers are yes or no, the intonation is always raising. Okay, so the intonation goes up. You've got to repeat this after me this way. Did you go out last night? It goes up. Okay? Yes, I went to the cinema, but I didn't enjoy the film much. So you see, did you go? It's a question. Did's there, so the verb doesn't change. I went to the cinema is affirmative. That's why the verb changed. And I didn't enjoy, it's negative. Negative presents itself with didn't. And if didn't is there, the verb doesn't change. It remains the way it is. Next one. When did Mr. Thomas die? About 10 years ago. Repeat it after me. They didn't invite us to the party, so we didn't go. Did you have time to do the shopping? No, I didn't. Oh, and it's quite important to remind you that sometimes, like what is happening here, in the same form that we used, the same way that in present simple, we could use do as auxiliary verb and do as a main verb at the same time. For example, when we ask questions like, what do you do? Or what did you do yesterday? So we are using do as the main verb and did as the auxiliary in this case. So just the first one goes to the past, which is the auxiliary. As the auxiliary goes, as the auxiliary itself works along with all the other verbs as did, with do it also works as did. So if I want to say, o que você fez ontem? What did you do yesterday? Okay, that would be the correct form of it. Here we've got 2 questions. What did you do at the weekend? And I didn't do anything. What you really need to be attentive to now, because many students make mistakes with, confusing verb to be with did, the same form that you used to probably confuse verb to be with do in the beginning of the present simple process there at the beginning of the basic course. So guys, if you've got verb to be, you know that the story is totally different, right? Then it's a horse of a different color. It's a horse of a totally different color. We've got to be attentive that verb to be has its own ways and its own mechanisms of becoming negative and becoming a question, and you already know that. That's an intermediate level class. But if you're not very sure, go back to my channel. There are some videos on more basic stuff. Maybe it will help you somehow. But we do not mix do, did with verb to be. So you will never see did you were. That doesn't make much of a sense. Where were you and did you go? These are good sentences because you're not mixing up verb to be and do there. Okay? Look at this, some sentences that we've got. I was angry because they were late. I was angry because they were late. Repeat after me. You know, I really trust that you now are repeating it out loud so you can hear your own voice. Or maybe even if you wanted, you could be recording your own voice so you can check on pronunciation later on. Okay? Next one. Was the weather good when you were on holiday? Was the weather good when you were on holiday? They weren't able to come because they were too busy. They weren't able to come because they were so busy. Did you go out last night or were you too tired? Did you go out last night or were you too tired? Okay. Very well, dear student. We've finished this part of the class. So now what I really want you to do is pause the video, try to do the activities that are presented in the book, and then come back later and follow the corrections along with me. Okay, I'm going to do it right now. So pause the video and do the activities. Unless you have done it before now, which is possible. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. So if you were returning here after some time, after working on the paper a little bit and giving your best, you're welcome. Let's continue. And if you haven't stopped, if you just continue the video, I'm really trying to help you out, but you should put more effort into studying. Let's see. Read what Laura says about a typical working day. I usually get up at 7 o'clock and have a big breakfast. I walk to work, which takes me about half an hour. I start work at 8:45. I never have lunch. I finish work at 5 o'clock. I'm always tired when I get home. I usually cook a meal in the evening. I don't usually go out. I go to bed at about 11 o'clock and I always sleep well. That's a very, very neat and organized routine that Laura has, isn't it? But yesterday was a typical working day for Laura. Write what she did or she didn't do. So based on her routine, you know that she does that all week long, and you know that she does that every day. The verb tense used in this text of her is mostly in the present simple because she's describing a routine after all. But now that we know this, we are focusing on yesterday. So if this is a typical day, yesterday was a typical day, so she followed her schedule. So let's see what she did yesterday. She says that she gets up at 7. So number one, she got up at 7 o'clock. She says that she has a big breakfast. So in the past, she had a big breakfast. Number 3, she says she walks to work. So yesterday she walked to work. Number 4, it takes her about half an hour every day. But yesterday it took her about half an hour, like always, to get to work. So it took her about half an hour to get to work. Number 5, as she always starts work at 8:45, yesterday she started work at 7 or 8:45. You see what we are doing here? We are comparing the present simple with the past simple, so you do not confuse them anymore. I never have lunch. So number 6, she didn't have lunch because she never has lunch, and yesterday was a typical day. Number 7, at 5 o'clock. I finish work at 5 o'clock. So she finishes work at 5 o'clock every day. Yesterday was a typical day, so she finished work at 5 o'clock. Number 8, I'm always tired. She says she's always tired when she gets home. So yesterday she was tired when she got home. She is tired when she gets, present simple, routine. She was tired when she got, past simple. A finished action in the past. It was yesterday, it's over. Number 9, a meal, yesterday evening. She says she usually cooks a meal. So yesterday she cooked a meal yesterday evening. She says that she doesn't go out. So yesterday she didn't go out. Number 10, she didn't go out yesterday evening. At 11 o'clock she says she goes to bed. So number 11, at 11 o'clock yesterday she went to bed. Number 12, well last night. She says she sleeps well every night. So yesterday she slept well. Okay, this is just to check if you really know how to transform something that is a routine or a permanent situation in the present into a factual action in the past that is over now. Now, we've got some verbs over here. The verbs are buy, whose past is bought, catch, whose past is got, cost, fall, fell, hurt, doesn't change, sell, sold, spend, spent, teach, taught, throw, through, write, wrote. So these are the verbs. I gave them to you with their present and past forms. What you need to do is choose which one of them will go with each one of the sentences here. Number 1, Mozart wrote more than 600 pieces of music. Good for him. Number 2, how did you learn to drive? My father taught me. Taught, the past of teach. My father taught me. Meu pai me ensinou. Number 3, we couldn't afford to keep our car, so we sold it. We sold it. Nós vendemos. We couldn't afford to keep our car, so we sold it. Number 4, Dave fell down the stairs this morning. Dave fell down the stairs. Poor Dave. And he broke his leg. Oh my God. No, not he broke. He hurt. Because we don't have the verb break here, but we have the verb hurt. So, Dave fell down the stairs this morning and hurt his leg. Number 5, Joe da-da-da, the ball to Sue. Who da-da-da? Okay, Joe threw the ball. You know the verb throw, the verb jogar. Jogar in the meaning of tacar. So, we are saying Joe jogou a bola para Sue, que pegou. So, Joe threw the ball to Sue, who caught it. Caught. Threw and caught. Joe threw the ball to Sue, who caught it. 6, and a lot of money yesterday. Spent. And spent a lot of money yesterday. The past of spend. She bought a dress which cost 100 euros. So Anne spent a lot of money yesterday. She bought a dress which cost 100 euros. Okay? Number 5. Now, you ask James about his holiday. Write your questions. He says, hi, how are you? Fine, thanks. I've just had a great holiday. Where did you go? To the United States. We went on a trip from San Francisco to Denver. Look, number 2 is asking a question. You should answer. What question is that? But look at the answer. We hired a car in San Francisco. So, how did you go? By car? Yes, we hired a car in San Francisco. Number 3, it's a long way to drive. How long did it take to get to Denver? I'm not going to write this on the board for you, dear student. You were able understanding, right? You were able to understand what I'm saying right now. So how long does it take, or did it, sorry. You can't understand if I read it wrongly. But how long did it take to get? How long did it take to get to Denver? 2 weeks. Quanto tempo levou para chegar em Denver? Number 4, where did you stay? In hotels? Yes. Small hotels or motels? Were they good? Yes. But it was very hot. Sometimes too hot. Okay, so no, this is not were they good. It's was it good? Or the weather, I guess. Was the weather good? That's a good solution. Was the weather good? Was the weather good? Yes, the weather was, but it was very hot. Sometimes too hot. And number 6, did you visit the Grand Canyon? Or did you see the Grand Canyon? Did you go to the Grand Canyon? Of course, it was wonderful. Okay, that's 5.3. Let me drink a sip of water. Actually, this is not water. This is beet juice, which is quite delicious. Now, the last exercise. Complete the sentence, put the verb into the correct form, positive or negative. So guys, by now, probably you know everything about past simple. Maybe you still struggle to memorize the verbs in the past, but I will help you out with that. I'm going to give you a list of verbs that probably will help you understanding this better. But the idea here is to choose the correct form of the past for the verbs that are given in brackets. For example, number 1, it was warm, so I took off my coat. Took off my coat. Number 2, the film wasn't very good. If the film wasn't very good, I didn't enjoy it much. Number 3, I knew Sarah was busy, so... Okay, I knew Sarah was busy, so I didn't disturb her. I didn't disturb her. 4, we were very tired, so we left the party early. We were tired, so we left the party early. 5, the bed was very uncomfortable. I didn't sleep well. Makes sense, right? The bed was uncomfortable and you didn't sleep well. Number 6, the window was open and a bird flew into the room. Fly in the present, flew in the past. F-L-E-W. 7, the hotel wasn't very expensive. It didn't cost much to stay there. If it wasn't expensive, it didn't cost much. 8, I was in a hurry, so I didn't have time to phone you. I was in a hurry. I didn't have time to phone you, sorry. And number 9, it was hard carrying the bags. They were very heavy. Verb to be in the past. This is quite easy. So, dear student, we've reached the end of this marvelous English grammar class. I hope you have learned or at least brushed up on some contents maybe you had forgotten. Attached to this video, not to this video, but altogether with this video, I don't know how yet, but I will post a video of me reading the verbs in the present, past, and past participle, so you can watch several times and get used to the pronunciation. That's the idea, okay? Thanks for watching. See you next video, okay? Bye for now.